Hey guys, welcome to week 2 covering Love Lives Here with our discussion guide podcast. I think it's just the Connected Life Book Club podcast covering week 2's discussion guide for Love Lives Here. It's a working title.
We're working on it.
We're getting there step by step. But I hope you guys are enjoying this book so far. We are covering chapters 4 through 6 today. So if you haven't already read that, if you haven't already caught up, know that there might be some spoilers, I guess is fair to say.
I guess.
But yeah, so we're just going to jump right in and start answering some of these questions. So, Candace, question number 1. Can you think of a specific time you felt pressure to fit in? What are the ways that God has made you unique?
I think that this is probably one of those that all of us are like, because you see different things in shows, movies, trends, even things that your friends do, and or other moms or other, just women, and you're like, ugh, I should really do that. And just that pressure. I mean, I remember in high school, I used to get so flustered. Well, probably more like middle school. I get so flustered about not fitting in, about not having the right thing to wear, which is usually expensive and too much money to actually buy a 7th grader. But still, I was like so wrapped up in it. And it's funny that even though there's that pressure to fit in, there was usually only a few people that were in that group. And everybody else just felt the pressure to fit through that mold, which is just not how life works. And of course, as you grow up, you understand that. And I think my first time really experimenting with how I was unique was in high school, and just kind of reaching out a little further of what makes me me. And one of those things is, I enjoyed older things. I enjoyed antiques, and don't laugh at me.
No, I'm like, where is she going with this? Okay.
Well, my friends called me a grandma because I thoroughly enjoyed antique style things. And one thing that I found when I was at a thrift shop one day was this floor length fur coat. It was like a patchwork fur coat. And it was like big collar, like the whole thing. It went all the way down to like mid calf range. And I wore it every day to school for years. Like that was my winter coat. That was just my winter coat. And I don't know.
I've been picturing like Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat if he was a grandmother. And it's just like,
but like a fancy grandma.
Fur. I love it. Okay, good.
And so, and that was like, it like empowered me to just do whatever I want, because who cares? And I think this is fun. So, people would say things and I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. Yes, it's amazing. Check me out. And that like was probably one of the first times that I really felt empowered to be different and unique. And of course, over the years, God has used my slightly different perspective on things to just reach people where they're at. I mean, I would say that I'm more of a chameleon in my personality. So as much as I tend to like really specific, unique things, I also totally understand the beauty that people see in other things. And so that more unique personality trait has been super helpful in just connecting to people that are very like me or very, very unlike me or different from me. And I think that that's something that God has really used in a big way.
I love that. I think our stories are eerily similar. So junior high was definitely the worst time of my entire life.
It's the worst for everybody. It's the worst.
I mean, I built my testimony in my 20s of like, going through and like doing bad stuff. But my junior high years were just foundational to shaping the human being I am. Like, I really wanted to be cool. I really wasn't at all. And I remember I would sit on the floor in my bathroom weeping, and my mom would be like, what's wrong? And I would just tell her whatever happened that day, someone telling me how my clothes weren't cool or I wasn't cool. And I mean, and these people looking back now, and like, yeah, like you said, it's the minority. And like, real talk, like, they're not cool people. Like, I'm like, I can't believe this is what I wanted to be. And I ended up doing that so often. My mom did go. They had to take out a loan to buy me the clothes that would make me cool so that I felt confident going to school. And you know what? They just found something else to mock. And in junior high, I was always like really smart. Like I would always miss like a 4.0 by like a B+ in math, right?
Sure.
And it was not cool to be smart. And so by the time I got to high school, I was intentionally trying to do bad in my classes. Oh yeah. I almost didn't graduate high school.
No!
And it wasn't because I didn't know my stuff, but I would purposely bomb tests. I wouldn't go to class because I wanted to be accepted by those people that thought I was cool. The one thing that I did in high school that I did embrace, just like you, Candace, was my style. And I remember there was a day I was wearing like camo pants, some theater shirt, because I was in theater, of course, and I had straws in my hair. You know how you get like those chopsticks and you do that? Except I had like 14 straws sticking out of my head. And I would make homemade patches with sayings I thought were cool out of like old clothes and safety pin them all over me. And I remember these kids came up to me one day. They were like, "Girl, I just love your collage of outfit." Oh, I had like this long beaded feather necklace. I was the weirdest thing.
Oh my word.
But I felt like, look how unique and different I am. But I was really just screaming my own insecurities from a rooftop. I mean, I was just a hot mess. But I had to finally stop. I don't even remember what it was that made the switch in my head, but I had to stop caring what these people thought. And the second I did, these people wanted to be my friends. Like it was this, they saw something in me where I didn't care anymore, and that was desirable. But yeah, I almost didn't graduate high school because I wanted so hard to fit in and feel accepted by these people. It didn't matter.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Because I got lucky. It was kind of cool to be smart in high school, so I tried way harder than I normally would.
I wish it was cool, man, because looking back now, I'm like, I really ruined things. I mean, it took a long time to get my life back on track in college and everything because I just got into this habit of not doing my work. So that'd be cool.
That's tough.
It was a wreck.
Yeah, that is tough. Well, it's so interesting, too, because in chapter 5, Maria talks about how she's the string and her husband, Bob, is a balloon, you know? And you kind of look at those things, you're like, oh, you see a string, seems boring. You see a balloon, now that's fun. But a balloon without a string is gone, you know, is not of use to anyone because it's so lofty and floaty and just gone. And, you know, Maria is Bob's anchor to home, to building, you know, roots and things like that, which I think is really cool. So in looking at our unique qualities, how can we use those to contribute to the kingdom of God? Because it really took them working together in order to find how they could each best contribute. And I think that happens a lot, you know, that we are looking at even other people who have a different quality than us, and you go, oh, I wish I had that. I wish I was the balloon. But really, the balloon would be nothing without the string. You know, the string makes the balloon what it is.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be arguing for the string of a balloon.
Well, I think that goes into what she was talking about in chapter 4, too. Like, you want to fit in. You want to be something that maybe you're not. And you get to the point where you have to accept who you are, how God made you, and how your strengths benefit the kingdom. I had a hard time when I married my husband because he is strong in ways that I'm not, but I feel like I should be.
Sure.
So Adrian is the one, honestly, who is much better at cleaning our house. Or, you know, he's the one who will tidy. I'll set up the systems of organization because I'm a creative person and I like that. But he's the one who's going to put stuff away. He's the one who's going to keep the laundry going. He'll empty the dishwasher. And because of our schedules, he's often the one that makes dinner. And so for me, I felt like, well, I'm failing. I'm failing as a wife. I'm failing as a mom. I'm failing because I'm a woman. I should be doing these like housekeeping things. This shouldn't be my husband. You know, I'm just like trying to fit that picture, that narrative. And but there are many ways that I bring things to our marriage that Adrian doesn't have. And like if it wasn't for the way that we work together, our home wouldn't run. And even in the way we are at church, Adrian is just so good at being that guy who's going to show up really early and set up. We're a part of a church plant, and so for a long time we had to do the whole setup and tear down every week. He'd be on the team that set up and tore down everything, quietly working behind the scenes, diligent worker bees. And I'm the one maybe doing announcements and then teaching the kids' church. You know, I mean, just the way that we're different, and it's worked together for us. What about Andrew? Do you guys have those things that are different?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Andrew and I, as much as we're like the same, because we see the world in similar ways, we are definitely like oil and water when it comes to just processes in our house. And he says that he keeps me fed and I keep him fun,
Oh,
you
I
know,
love
because like
that.
I'll totally forget to just eat or like make myself food,
Yeah.
you know, or just like, you know, just it's a symbol of the typical habits of daily life. And so he's the one that's usually cooking and doing whatever. And I'm like, hey, let's randomly go here for the weekend. And he's like, well, okay, all right, I'll go along with it, you know. And so we do a lot of those things where we complement each other. But I think especially in the church or in ministry, I understand what you were saying about, you know, the people being behind the scenes. And I've even gotten that just because we are both on-air people, we tend to be the people that are more comfortable speaking or being in front of people. And a lot of times that gets confused in the church, in, you know, different ministries and work things. Like the person that's in front has all the answers. Well, that's just not true. I mean, we can tell you that right there.
Yeah.
That is just not true. But to have the people that are super diligent, to have the people that are super organized and that are, you know, doing research and organizing things and cleaning up, setting down or tearing down, all of those things are so valuable that it is everybody working together. And I think that the fact that she emphasizes that is just really important.
Mm-hmm. And I feel awful sometimes that I'm not better at those, I don't want to say service things, because I mean I can do that, but it is not my desire. If I'm going to choose on a list, I don't want to get up at 6 a.m. and go in and like empty a big heavy trailer and set everything up. Like that's not, but I feel bad about that. I feel like I should, and it's taken a lot of time to be like, it's okay to not be good or made even for everything.
Well, and it's interesting because in the next chapter, she talks about, you know, following the lines of, what is it, quartz to find the gold. Yeah. And so I think to a certain extent that speaks to growing ourselves, because I think we're naturally good at some things just based on our personalities and how we were raised. But then there are ways that we should try to be better. And if you have that kind of gut instinct of like, I really want to do that, I don't think it's bad to want to grow yourself and want to stretch yourself and try to do those things, but it's about the guilt, you know, not making yourself feel guilty about not being naturally good at them, but trying, you know, because that's always a good thing. And so the next question actually says, when is a significant time in your life when your faith grew? A time when you struck gold, so to say, you know, when you dug deeper into your faith.
Yeah.
Do you have a story?
So this one was harder for me to answer, I think, because I don't think it was a specific situation. Like I can't point to that moment. One thing I really liked about this chapter is how she emphasized that everyone's mine is different. It's their journey. Mm-hmm. And you cannot mine someone else's mine for them. Like it's a dangerous thing to even try to do. Whew. So I remember when I
need to hear that.
No, really. And I was thinking about my mom, because when I was in my early 20s and I was just, you know, building my testimony, my mom, understandably, was just like so desperate for me to know Jesus. Mm-hmm. And we would get into vicious fights. Mm. And she meant well. She really did. But it wasn't effective for me. She could not mine my gold for me, so to speak.
Right. Sure.
I mean, and so I needed to get there myself. And eventually I did. And, but even that, I would say, isn't that moment where I struck gold. When I hit rock bottom and I came to know Jesus, it was that next year where God showed me over and over how diligently and patiently he was pursuing me still. And it was all of those moments where, I just have stories of him just showing up in situations that I couldn't deny that this was God. Like this was him. He was reaching out. He was being patient. He was pursuing. He was understanding. He was wooing. He was doing all of those things. And I would have late night conversations with friends, and all of a sudden the conversation would turn to be about Jesus, and there'd be me digging a little bit deeper in my mind. And there would be something I found in my Bible, a stray piece of paper that popped up right when I needed it the most. That was a little message. It was like, okay, well, here's another, spadeful of dirt from my mind. And it was just over that next year, digging deeper and deeper and deeper until I found this gold I hadn't even been actively looking for, but I'd been able to collect. And it's kind of sustained me then over the next couple of years. Like that first year in my faith was just so amazing. And I just saw so many smaller instances of God being God. That just really struck it for me. So it wasn't that one singular moment in my journey.
Well, and to me, that speaks to, it follows exactly what she's talking about, because, I mean, she talks about finding the quartz and following it, and so I think so often, and if you've especially gone through a tough moment or a time of like exploring, that it's not like, oh, I'm going to learn more about Jesus. And then the next day you're like, good thing I know more about Jesus. Yeah. Like, that's just not how it works. It's time, It takes time for us to cook. It takes time for us to dig deeper, I mean, even miners would tell you that it's not like you see the quartz and the next day you have the gold. And so often we overlook God's timeline because we're like, hey, I found this little bit, I'm making steps, why don't I just have all the answers now? And so I think that that's really a solid analogy. It fits into the analogy of following the quartz, because I'm sure now as you look back from where you were 10 years ago, you could be like, oh yeah, no, there's a lot of gold that I found along the way. And so, yeah, I think that was a great reminder that it doesn't happen instantaneously, and that, it happens just by digging, by finding that piece and wanting a little bit more and following that. Because, yeah, it isn't like walking into a room filled with gold. It's finding it flake by flake, little bit by little bit along the way.
And I think that sometimes as we're digging and as we're seeking and as we're pursuing, we may end up with just a killer payday. Like there just may be that moment that is super rewarding, that we enter into this cavern and it's glittering with gold or whatever. I'm not a miner. I really don't know how this process works.
Really into this metaphor.
But anyways, we have those rewarding moments, but I think it's easy to see someone else having that experience, having that life-changing singular moment and feeling like somehow we've missed it because that wasn't our story.
Ooh, back to the comparison.
Like it. So,
look at
okay,
this.
So Candace, what about you? Have you had that struck gold moment?
No, I would say that it kind of follows the same pattern of like slowly throughout time. I think that moving to Madison, because that was probably marrying my husband was my most recent big life change. But as far as like personally in my own development, moving to Madison 6 years ago was one of my biggest moments of growth. To a certain extent, I kind of got to hit a reset button. I mean, when I was going to college, getting into a church and finding like my place was difficult, and I always grew up like in a church, being one of the, I don't know, not like core people, but I felt very much like the church was my family. And then leaving that, going to college where I just never felt like I fit in. I never felt like I was, I don't know, in the right spot whenever I went to different churches. So I spent a lot of time bouncing around and kind of following my faith in my own ways. But finding the community in a church family once I came to Madison was kind of like striking gold. I mean, that felt like a big revelation moment for me. So I'm really grateful for that.
Good. Well, I'm grateful that you're in Madison, Candace.
Me too.
Oh, man. So thank you for joining with us. Again, we are super excited to keep going through this book. And we are going to be coming at you next week with part 3. Yes, part 3 of the Love Lives Here discussion guide, Connected Life Book Club podcast. Still working title.
7 through 9 for next week, right?
Yes, 7 through 9.
7 through 9. If you want to answer any of these questions and just let us know how you feel about them, feel free to leave them in the comments section, write them on the Facebook page. You can even email us if you want. You can find our emails on the website. But head over to the Connected Life Book Club Facebook page to chime in.